And hello and welcome to the Fly Nubian Queen YouTube channel, everybody. I am Dr. Alicia, and today I have a very special episode for you guys. And I'm so thrilled to share it with you. We're joined by a sex therapist today. Nikquan Lewis is her name. Say hello, Nikquan.
Hey y'all.
She's a sex therapist, and together we are going to debunk some of the pervasive myths about male sexuality. Now, before y'all start with me talking about bringing only women on here, female therapists to talk about male issues, I do, by the way, open up my platform for any male therapists who would love to come on and give their perspective. But today we have a female perspective, and I notice she works with a lot of men in her office and in her practice. And so we're going to love to hear the wisdom that she is bringing us today. So it is an honor to have you here so that we can explore some of these topics in an open and honest conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And before we dive in, I just want to extend a warm invitation to everybody watching. I'd like for you guys to text the word love, LOVE, to 87948. And when you do that, you will receive information on nurturing healthy love and healthy relationships. So, and it will come directly onto your phone. So, anyway, thank you for being here. And now I think that we should get started. So, Miss Nikquan. There is a pervasive myth that we often hear, and it is that all men, all men want is sex, and they always want it. That it's having sex is what goes through a man's mind every 7 seconds. Um, could you share your insights on the reality behind this stereotype and how it affects men?
Absolutely. I want to just briefly highlight on what you just said, which was we're two women, right? So we are two women that are bringing our clinical expertise to the conversation, right? However, lived experience, which of course we cannot have because we're not men, but lived experience is important, but we are bringing our clinical expertise. So as
Mhm.
clinicians, we are the expert on the process, right? But men and the client in general is the expert on themselves. So I just like to, put that out there. Now, common myth, right? I get this so much in my practice when I am working with couples, heterosexual couples, and men in general, with them struggling with this is all people think that I want from them.
Mm.
So oftentimes, it starts with attachment. Research shows that women express their attachment oftentimes through relationship, whereas a lot of men, nobody, there's never going to be a one size fit all. We don't overgeneralize in our profession, so it's important to understand that I'm not talking about all men. I'm talking about some men express their attachment through sex. And so oftentimes, well, think about it. From a society lens, our men, especially our Black men, are programmed to, not express emotion, right? Not do a lot of things that are qualified as feminine, right? So where they get their needs met oftentimes is through sex. And so
Mhm.
that is what they're communicating through attempting to physical touch, attempting to, interact sexually. However, think about intention versus impact. Their intention very well may be to connect, right? To have or engage in some form of intimacy. The impact of that based off of how they are communicating that it may be negatively reinforcing this myth that all they want is sex, but that may not be their intention. They may be trying to connect. They don't have the language though, because again, how we've been socialized.
So sometimes what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes men, just like everybody else, would love to have connection. And when they feel a lack of connection in them, they have been so-called programmed to be driven solely by this sexual desire. And it seems like that's a very narrow way that a lot of men have, I think, socialized to express this connection. And sometimes their interest in intercourse can fluctuate. In reality, it really can fluctuate just based on how they feel, if they're under a whole lot of stress. And it just like all of us is driven by all these sort of external things too. But it's such a narrow view. And I'm wondering too, if men who don't feel in this stereotypical way and still want to connect other ways, do they feel like in some way they feel inadequate?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, very, very possible. And so to clarify also, men have been socialized to communicate physically. And if we think of like sports and, just like violence and things like that, they've been socialized to communicate that way. However, it doesn't mean that, men don't want to connect. They don't want to be intimate. They don't want to be soft, right? However, again, because of the stereotypes of these things as it relates to men, they don't oftentimes have the language. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, it's the language piece that I assist men that I work with communicating exactly what it is that they want, because their habits, their actions may be communicating one thing, right? But their intentions, what they intend to communicate,
Mhm.
could be night and day. It could intend to communicate, I want my person, right? I want to connect with you specifically. But if all I'm bringing to the table is physical touch and sexual physical touch, at that, my partner is hearing something very different.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of the and I want to go on to the next question, but I think it's so interesting. A lot of women respond so heavily to this. They're like, he's all over me, like all he wants is this one thing from me, but can't there be something else this man could want from me? And it's like having that conversation between couples where they can say, I'm more than just this physical thing for you. I can connect with you in a whole different ways. I'm hearing women kind of complain in that way to say, I do want connection with my man, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. And it's this miscommunication between the two of them. And it's good that you work with men on this communication, but do you ever include women in this too? Do you ever work with couples where you're like saying, hey, what is it that the both of you need, and how do you talk about those things?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a daily thing for me because it comes down to language. It comes down to communication, right? And again, so many couples don't have the language to build that bridge of compromise where this is what I want and this is what I want, right? Again, what is my intention? And then what am I communicating? And so helping them to see that there is oftentimes a difference, and also helping women to see that. So for men who, work in, depending on what field they're in, if they're in a lot of stressful fields and things like that, they're wanting softness, they're wanting a soft place to land, right?
Mhm.
However they may communicate it sexually, but again, it's the intention
Very
piece.
insightful. I really appreciate that. I think that even like another topic that really seems to be taboo too is the issue that a lot of men have, a lot of pressure that men have of getting in the mood but not achieving an erection. I cannot believe I'm talking about this, but I think we need to talk about it. Can you talk about how common this is and why it shouldn't be a source of shame in relationships?
So here's the thing, especially in society, there's belief, straight up nonsense, that if a man does not get an erection, it's absolute dysfunction. That's not what erectile dysfunction is. You have erectile dysfunction, but you also have erectile dissatisfaction. And there is variation with sex in general, right? There's stressors, there's depression, there's diet, there's medication, right? There's so many different things that contributes or impacts erections, right? The quality of the relationship, the quality of the connection. Because all men, you don't, the again, myth, men are just about sex. They don't care about the connection, and that's not true for everyone. And so erectile disappointment simply means the times when someone wants that erection and they feel that they should have it, but they don't get it. And then that brings about the disappointment, which oftentimes comes with shame, blame, guilt, right? Just a lot of judgment, even. And so erectile disappointment, just that's exactly what it means. Erectile dysfunction is more of reoccurring issues, right? Your relationship is healthy. You're not on any kind of medications that may impact it. Your testosterone levels are good. Everything is good, but you cannot maintain erection on a consistent basis. That's when we're talking about more of the dysfunction. But for, the average person who doesn't have an erection here for various reasons, that does not always equate to dysfunction. I mean, to, erectile dysfunction. There is a difference. And even men don't have the language for that, and they feel bad about themselves. And then if their partner berates them, they feel even worse, right? They feel like they should have this erection. And now that gets into performance-based sex, and that's our next topic. But I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, so much of men's masculinity is tied to their ability to please their partner. And and not having an erection can cause uh, some sort of anxiety that's brought into the bedroom, because it's like you're thinking, am I not good enough? Does he not find me attractive enough? Is it technique is not working? You internalize so much of that. Both partners can internalize so much shame, like what's wrong with me? And I think what you're saying is that we need to reduce this sort of stigma and encourage men to, number one, seek medical attention, because it could really be a medical issue, and to seek support, and for the partner not to shame them and make them feel bad about it. And, to just know that there could still be genuine love between the two of them and genuine desire, but just because that particular area is not performing well.
In that moment, right? In
Yeah,
that
yeah.
moment. So I'm encouraging everyone to do their best to not internalize that a lack of erection, just as well as a lack of lubrication
Yeah.
for, women, right? To not internalize these to mean that something is wrong with you or something is wrong with your relationship. There's several layers that impact sexual health. And it doesn't have to, we automatically go to dysfunction, right? And doesn't have to be dysfunction. It could be very much situational. And so we want to slow it down. And also we have to expand our definition of sex. Sex is not only penetration, and it doesn't have to stop because someone doesn't gain an erection in that moment, because it doesn't mean it's not coming, right? But again, what's on my mind? If I'm so much into my head and so much focus on pleasing my partner, or really making my partner have an orgasm, then I'm not experiencing the pleasure. And of course, we're talking about blood flow here, right? So if I'm in my head, blood flow is not going to get to the penis where it needs to, and it's going to impact the sexual experience. So expanding our definition of what sex means is essential, because the penis has, the head of the penis has so many nerve endings. However, there's so many erogenous zones on the body for men and women. And if we're only focusing on penetration, you are missing out.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, people who just joined us. We are talking about um, myths about male sexuality. Yes, we're two women talking about it before y'all start. Um, but we're experts in this area, and I specifically have sex expert Nikquan Lewis here, and she is talking to us about what she sees generally in her office and the work that she does with couples and males in particular. And we're debunking myths today. There's so many myths about male sexuality, everybody, and particular about Black male sexuality, because we know it is a stereotype that men have to be hypersexual. Men, that to be a man, you have to always put your manhood up, and you always have to show and prove who and what you are through sexual activity. And that's how you maintain your masculinity. And we're here to say that is a myth. We're here to say it's not just this one narrow way to assert yourself in this way to be a man, that manhood encompasses so many different things. It's not just performance. And if there is a performance issue going on, it could be a very honest medical problem, or you need to see a professional, or maybe a medical doctor, to help you sort of realize, is it stress? Is it lifestyle? Is it health issues? Is it certain medications that you're taking? All of that can impact this, but it doesn't mean that there's a lack of desire and there's a lack of masculinity or your worth. Your worth is not in your private parts.
That's right.
Men and women, please know this.
That's right.
So anyway, I had to put that out there and welcome everybody here to this conversation. And it's very strange for me to talk openly about sexuality. So I love the fact that you're coming on here talking about all this stuff that that normally is unusual to talk about. And by the way, I went to school at Indiana University in Bloomington with the Kinsey report, and I did take.
Yes.
It's so funny. I took human sexuality. The last semester of my senior year, I took the human sexuality course because, like, why wouldn't I? It was just an elective. And the teacher, oh my God, it was so uncomfortable. But we were all spread out in this big lecture hall, and he made us all sit in the first two rows. So we were sitting like shoulder to shoulder. And I was like looking at the videos, like, oh my God. I remember like taking notes. We were all so embarrassed. I think the teacher just cracked up. But anyway, it was a way for us to just like demystify some of these things about something that it's so normal to everybody. I don't know what goes on with you as I talk about some of this.
It's common. It's common in our profession. I want to normalize that. That is something that I do also in my other leg of my practice. Is I teach clinicians the importance of assessing sexual health, because what you just said, Dr. Alicia, a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. So just as clients coming in my virtual door are uncomfortable at times and need assistance with, gaining that language, I assist clinicians as well. Because again, in our society, it's been stigmatized. It's judgment, it's shame, right? And so I assist people with removing that shame and reauthoring their stories with sex.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so moving on. There's a lot of talk about performance-based sex versus pleasure-based sex. Could you explain the difference and why the latter might be healthier?
So a lot of men specifically engage in performance-based sex. And what that is they are trying to obtain a goal. And the goal is to make their partner orgasm. And so what that means is, again, they are in their head. They're focusing on, the person's pleasure, which there's nothing wrong with focusing on their pleasure, but they're not necessarily even focusing on the pleasure. They're focusing on the orgasm, with a misunderstanding that pleasure is about the experience, right? It is about the experience, the man's pleasure and his partner's pleasure, right? It's not just about the pleasure, the orgasm. Orgasm is one type of pleasure, but there are, like I said, when I talked about expanding people's definition of sex, right? You have your fingers, you have your mouth, you have toys, you have other ways to, bring about pleasure. But performance-based sex is focusing on the act and the orgasm or the finished result versus enjoying the journey.
Yeah,
And you're missing out. I'm gonna keep telling you, you're missing out if you are focusing on the orgasm and not the journey itself.
not the journey itself. It's so interesting because in the media and particularly pornography, that's all about performance. Like there's really no real, I mean, I don't know if y'all seen pornography, but there really, I've seen it. And it really is, it's just performance-based sex is what you see on TV, or in the media or even in pornography. That's all you seem to see. And it's about doing it right and fulfilling this perceived role, I find that's happening between couples. And I think what I like what you're saying is that pleasure-based sex, it shifts the focus to connection. And really that can lead to more satisfying experiences in relationships. And it fosters mutual respect between two people who are just having a lovely experience with each other. And I think that's a profound distinction. What do you say?
100%. It not only does it impacts and increases connection, intimacy, respect, right? Couples that focus or experience more pleasure-based sex report more relationship satisfaction, right? So also it's a decrease. So sex is a stress reliever. However, if I'm having performance-based sex and I'm all in my head, which means that anxiety is increased, stress is not being relieved in that moment. It's actually being increased. So there's several reasons to have and to focus on pleasure-based sex, and understand that if you lose your erection during, which it happens, and I'm going to say that it might happen to everybody at some point in time. That doesn't mean to stop and focus on the erection. That means to keep going and again pick up pleasure. Find ways to pleasure your partner, find ways that you like to experience pleasure, and communicate that. Again, so that's what I'm doing when I work with couples. How do we talk about this? How do we identify what we enjoy, what we desire, and how do we communicate that effectively to a partner? So what brings you pleasure?
Yeah, I like what you're saying because all interactions, listen, we are so stressed out with our day-to-day jobs, dealing with the outside world. I love that you said men like to come home and have a nice, comfortable place to lay their head. And I really like that because in my mind, it's like the interaction between people in a committed relationship should be stress reducing, not stress increasing, and just having stress reducing conversations. And I talked to a lot of couples about that, how the two of you can have a conversation about your day that reduces the stress. And you got a friend and a companion that's going to have your back no matter what. But in the bedroom, it should also be stress reducing. It should be just based on having fun, having fun in a way that is very respectful. And I just like that you extended the stress reducing attitude all the way across, interactions between two people in a committed relationship. And even not in, I mean, just even, they don't have to be married. It doesn't have to be a scenario of marriage, but just any time that you just copulate, I guess I want to say, with another person, it shouldn't be so stressful and scary and frightening and shameful and just all of those things that for a lot of us being introduced to sex has been so negative. And
Yeah.
for Black people, we've been so sexualized, hypersexualized, women and men,
Yeah.
hypersexualized in this stereotypical way that we bring some of that shame and some of that discomfort into our relationships.
Big time.
Oh,
Absolutely. And so we have to work through those stereotypes and those stories, and again, reauthor our relationships with sex. Because otherwise, not only does it impact you, it impacts if you have children, it impacts how you educate them or don't, right? It continues. We're talking about generational dysfunction here, right? So it just continues to impact us. It prevents us from experiencing, the pleasure that we could. It impacts how we raise our children, how we engage with others. And so because of men specifically have been programmed in this way with sex. One of the ways that I assist them with expanding their vocabulary about it is, one, to identify their intention. If they're, because again, what's the myth? All men want is sex. If they really want connection, right? How do we communicate that? And also understand that communication does need to happen throughout the day. Now, folks is busy. Ain't nobody got time to just be, texting and stuff all day, right?
Mhm.
But however, you do want to make an attempt to connect to your partner, and you also want to prioritize non-sexual touch just as well as sexual
Yeah.
touch.
Yeah.
You may be surprised. I have a lot of couples that, and I ask them, how many times have you, hugged today? And
Yes.
they have not hugged at all.
Mm.
Right. And so then when the man comes and now he wants sex, and now so the woman is like, well, we haven't connected at all, but really he's asking for connection. But because as women, again, our attachment is more relational,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
feel like, okay, now you are objectifying me, right? Versus connecting. So it's the miscommunication. Men want connection. A lot of men. I don't like to overgeneralize. A lot of men want connection. A lot of men want to feel desired.
Yeah.
Feel loved.
Mhm.
It's the communication piece that oftentimes may be missing.
Yeah, I mean, and as you're talking, I just know that like even men want to be treated like actual people. They don't want to be, and I always say this because my husband and I we do this love and money, and we talk about that with relationships, and I'm like, women, hey, stop. Men are not an ATM machine. They're not somebody that you could just like cha-ching, just take money from and it be so transactional. It's just like, where's the emotion there? Men want to have that connection. They just don't feel like their one job is to bring home money. And you don't want to be so narrow. And I don't understand why so many people get into this where they just feel like that's all men are good for, that's it. And all of the messages received. I'm even thinking about some of the messages my mom used to tell me. All men want from you is one thing. Like that's what she used to tell me when I started dating. She's like, be careful out there because men, they only want one thing. Well, yeah, but now that when you talk to men and get to know them, I don't know, maybe they were telling me what I wanted to hear, but it seemed like they really were interested in me to some extent, not just that one thing. Maybe it was an extension of our connection with each other, but I've spoken to many men who are just like, you know what, I think she thought I was trying to come on to her, but I really was not.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to other men to be like, she came on too strong. I felt pressured to want to do something that I didn't want to do. And I think we need to start, as Black people, we need to start seeing each other as a full human being with full set of feelings and reactions and emotions and human beings, not just little puppets and transactional relationships. I think we need to get out of that and start getting into a place where we can just feel a little more transparent, a little more open with each other, and just give each other all of the different ways of intimacy. Sexual intimacy is just one of many different ways to be intimate with another person, and even financial intimacy. All of these things go with a relationship, all of them equally important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the
Oh
nail on
my
the head.
gosh. I really love that you came on here and sharing your insights with us. Before we end, I just want to say hello to everybody joining us. We are talking about myths of, we are two experts who have been doing this work for a long time and trained. So, in terms of our expertise, we're talking about male sexuality and myths. And of course, if you got topics or questions for us, you can let us know. Maybe we'll come back on and answer your questions because I'm certain there's a lot of questions to be asked. But before we go into wrapping up, I'd like for you to just take a second, if you don't mind, um, and share with us one of your personal hobbies or interests you have outside of being a sex therapist. What do you like to do, Miss Nikquan?
Oh, I like to do a lot. I like to eat.
You like to
I
eat?
Yes,
Okay.
No, I don't like to cook. I like to eat. I don't like to cook, but I like to eat. I love to travel. I have some trips coming up. I have last year traveled so much, but that's probably one of my biggest things is I love to travel.
I mean, I think that is so, I think as therapists and just as human beings, traveling is so embedded into eating and exploring. And it's just this innate curiosity that we have as lifelong learners. We are all lifelong learners. It's all this curiosity. And I love to eat and travel too. I like to cook too, but eating and traveling is so great because it makes my professional career so much more richer because I
Yeah.
get to see, and of course we can never turn off our therapist hat, everybody. It's like I'm going to the airport tomorrow and I'm sure I'm going to be like analyzing families at the airport, be like, their little sister don't like the big brother. I can see something going on there. Like you can't turn it off, but it's so great to just being worldly and seeing how we're all part of this universe and how universal some of our problems are. Some of the issues that we have is specifically to Black people, of course, and the stereotypes that we've talked about today. But a lot of times when you travel around, you see the universality of problems and people. And it's a very humbling experience, going and traveling and meeting people. And it just breaks down a lot of barriers. So I like that you shared your little personal experience. And so anyway, before we move on, and you can, have some parting thoughts, I just want to thank you for coming on here and talking about and enlightening us about understanding male sexuality. And you've provided us a much needed counter narrative to some of these stereotypes, not only about Black men, but men in general. And I think some of the things that you've said today in terms of stereotypes have really constrained men's experiences and expressions of sexuality. So your expertise is really, really very welcomed and I think invaluable. So I truly appreciate you joining us today. Parting thoughts before we end, and let everybody know also how to get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Everybody can find me on socials at Intimate Connections PLLC. And if you are in Texas and you would like some support, my website, intimateconnectionspllc.com. So parting thoughts for my men. If you focus more on communicating your intention, that oftentimes lands way better and you get the result that you likely are looking for. If your partner knows that my goal is to connect, right? My goal is to be close to you versus, you just grabbing a boob or there's nothing wrong with physical touch. And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with everybody being sexual beings. That is a natural part of life. That is why I do what I do. I believe that sex is a part of holistic wellness. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But making sure that you're communicating your intentions is important. Making sure that we prioritize non-sexual touch as well as other types of intimacy is important. Ladies, or not just ladies, but just partners in general, understanding that nobody is a robot.
Mm,
There's going to be variations in
mm,
the bedroom, and that needs to be honored, respected, and be mindful of that.
mindful.
Be mindful of that. Nobody's a robot. There's going to be times when, person with a vagina may, need extra lubrication because everybody should be using lubrication. We're probably going to have to talk about women and sexuality next.
Then you talk about women.
Yeah. But there may be times where, men may need some assistance as well with their erection, but expand your viewpoint on sex. And no, sex is what you make of it. Don't limit it. Step outside
Very
the
nice.
box. And what I'm talking about is creating a sex life that is perfect for you and your partner.
Wonderful. And viewers, everybody, this has been illuminating, don't y'all think? I hope it encourages all of you all to rethink and engage more openly in these conversations about male sexuality, free from misconceptions and myths. And anyway, to our viewers, everybody out there, I just want to thank you for joining us and being part of this important conversation. Remember, I think it's so important for understanding and empathy. I think that's what we're talking about. Understanding, empathy. These are key components of a healthy relationship. And don't forget, you can text the word love, LOVE, to, let me look, 87948. And you will get more insights on fostering healthy relationships and intimacy. And what we didn't get to say is, how can people get a hold of you, Nikquan, if they want to? Where can they find you?
Find me on socials at Intimate Connections PLLC. I also have resources for anyone needing to expand their communication as it relates to, sexual intimacy and healthy relationships.
Oh, excellent. And you guys know where to find me. I'm Dr. Alicia with coachingwithdralicia.com or on Instagram at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Those are the best two ways to get a hold of me and follow everything that I'm doing. But so goodbye now for everybody. Thank you for joining us. Keep this conversation going. Hit the like and share with your partner. If your partner's not here watching, or if your potential mate, or if you know somebody who's in a relationship, share this video with them. Hit the like button, please. And remember, openness and understanding. Those are the pathways to healthier relationship. And we want to have like a good Black society. We want to have a society that's healthy relationships. We need to get over this, right? So stay connected to us here on Fly Nubian Queen. And for more enlightening conversations, I'm bringing Nikquan back on here. We're going to talk about other stuff, other taboo topics we're going to talk about. I'm glad that you're here so that we can talk about some of these things that many of us are very uncomfortable talking about. So thank you so much.
Thank
Goodbye,
you, Alicia.
everybody.